Hey, Pro Nerds, it's Iggy here with Project Nerd, and I am coming to you with our Denver Film Festival coverage. Normally, you would see me downtown in Denver, hanging out with some of the other Project Nerd team. But when this crazy year we're here, unfortunately, we're unable to be down there. Thankfully, movies can be enjoyed online, and Denver Film Festival has gone digital and has allowed us to still connect with filmmakers via Zoom here. So I am sitting down with Anabel Rodríguez Ríos. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's
Okay,
quite right.
perfect. Perfect. And she is the filmmaker, the director of a documentary called Once Upon a Time in Venezuela, which is an award winner at Sundance and is also showing at the Denver Film Festival. So how are you doing today, Anabel?
Very well. I'm in Vienna right now, in Austria, Central
Yes.
Europe, and I'm cold.
Oh, I was just about to ask, like, what's the weather like right now in Vienna this time of year?
Shall I show you? I mean, just like quick.
Is it
That's
just really cold? There you go. Is
well, it
that
is.
it looks like cold on the window for sure. Awesome. It's getting chilly here too in Denver, but probably not that bad. So, under normal circumstances, would you have been able to travel to Denver Film Festival, or would you have been enjoying this invitation
Definitely.
from afar?
Definitely, I would have been there, and
Oh yeah.
I have never been into like mid states. No, only New York once, and once in Park City, but apart from
Oh,
that, I don't know.
Denver, unfortunately, like I said, it's a crazy year. So right now, a lot going on, but normally, well, it's very beautiful here, and hopefully, we'll get you back for a future film when things get back to some level of normal. But in the meantime, what do you tell us about this documentary? It looks, from what I've read about it, it looks fascinating.
Well, once upon a time in Venezuela, actually, we got as well an award in the Hot Springs documentary
Oh yeah,
festival. That's super because they awarded it to the best international film. And we were celebrating, but like Zoom style, like over the
right.
internet, and just these parties that are it's just strange how things have changed, isn't it? But
It
well,
is.
yeah, once upon a time in Venezuela, it's really like from the other end of the spectrum of the experiences. It happens right in nature in a little town called Congo Mirador, which is in Maracaibo Lake, which is an enormous lake like a sea, and it's from where Venezuela extracts its oil from.
Okay.
And we spent there 5 years and making this documentary following the destiny of this village that happens to the lagoon where it is swamping, turning into a swamp as a result of the climate change.
Mhm.
So we follow up on the stories of the people on how they deal with it, and within that as well, we see so that this village mirrors what has been Venezuela over the last 20 years. We've got very polarized, radicalized, and within that, a government that is totalitarian nowadays is really got into the society with the right terrible populism, and the result of that is been well what you might have heard in the news, a collapse of the society.
Right. So I was actually going to ask that because, as you mentioned, Venezuela has had a very polarizing government, probably going on close to 20 years now. There's been a lot of political recourse there. And you mentioned a few things with that. It sounds like the village, even though it's a smaller village, has definitely been impacted by it. But another thing you mentioned, too, with their government style, similar to what's happening in Brazil and here in the United States right now, it's a government that's not taking climate change very seriously. And it's impacting the environment, obviously. So it sounds like even though this is a small, somewhat remote village, it's still seeing that impact of what the country is going through as a whole.
Oh yes, definitely. In terms of climate change, and as well in terms of social behavior, the leadership in Venezuela is being based on a very aggressive speech. Over decades, and over the last year it's become even worse, and it's become right in a police state. but I just bring that because I would have, I didn't think that words could be so, could affect so much the behavior, the social behavior, and this had happened in Venezuela. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so I am a historian by nature. My degree was in history and I focused heavily on World War II. And there's often so much of that of like, how did this influence that seems so horrendous? And if we're in it, right? And we in some, not just in Venezuela, in a few countries, we're seeing to lesser extents, or in Venezuela, more extent of this persuasion, basically. So you mentioned you were there for 5 years. What 5 years was it? Just recently, or was it earlier in this past decade?
From 2013 up to 2018, we shot the film,
Oh,
and then within that time, it happened that there was the last elections of for the parliament, the last
right.
democratic the elections. After that, there's been like right fraud type of elections, and this is the time frame in which we were, and after that we were editing, because you're gonna see it's a film that is like a cinema verite style, so then you're really like immersed into the lives of these people. It works a little bit as fiction does, that you are into their
Pulled in,
little
right?
stories, emotionally engaged with them, and that's how we build it. And very interesting that you are an historian, basically.
Right. I love history. I am a nerd for it, for sure. But you mentioned, obviously, Venezuela itself has polarizing political things going on. It seems within this documentary, there are two kind of characters that are really focused on as well, that are polarizing, I guess would be a term for it too. So kind of reflecting that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did to capture these two figures and a little bit about them?
Yeah, well, this was a process, and at the end, yes, we the summum of that was that we focus in the only teacher of the village, who is a single mother, and she's she's attacked by this other woman that is a leader of the village, and she's the representative of the government party, which is the only party, and she's the one that has the resources and the few little, casual jobs that come from the oil industry. She's the one that has the power of saying, okay, you take it or not. Or for instance, there is this system of subsidy of the food, and she tells who receives these boxes with food, which, well, over the last years has been, um, so the economy is been a disgrace for the people. So then this box of food actually makes a difference. And right now,
Right.
this year is like really life changing.
Right.
So then this person that has, so to use that for as a political, tool it gets is a tragedy these days. So then these are these two women, and then the teacher is called Natalie, and the other one is called Tamara. And what you're gonna see is that, I mean, this Tamara, she wants this Natalie out because she wants to put another girl that belongs to the party in that position, because this girl doesn't belong to the party, the teacher. But she cannot say it up front. She cannot say up front, I am a oppositionist or something. She's more like hidden, a little bit hidden.
Right.
Because of course you get your job taken, you get taken out of your job if you belong if you don't belong to the
Right.
party. And this actually has happened in the country in other, so I see in the village, you see it like in a microcosmos vision, but this had happened in greater scale in the country. So that's how it is. And it sounds like super, like it is, I mean, of course it's a drama, and actually the film it portrays a tragedy. At the end, I'm not gonna give a spoiler here, but these are the forces that push people to leave, and remember, right now Venezuelans, we are more than 5 million that have gone in an exodus, you know, and we
Right.
are more than 5 million abroad, out of which 3 million approximately are applying for refuge status. Yeah. And so then is when things get really complicated.
Well, I think it's important, and we talked a little bit about history, and what makes documentaries like this matter so much is you mentioned on a scale, you have a small village within a very heavily populated country, right? That is, it show how much the impact is on that. And then I think that takes it even a step further to, you mentioned the migration, the refugee status, things like that. We already brought up Brazil, which is right there too, how it's probably being impacted as well. I think sometimes we, being all across the world, we don't think about how this still impacts the rest of the world, but it does. And I think it's amazing because a documentary like this can humanize it. And sorry for my computer going crazy, of course, that it's quiet. As you mentioned before we started recording, you turned your stuff off. I guess I didn't set mine. So sorry to all those watching the interview. But anyways, to get back on point is, as you mentioned, it is very humanizes what's a global, is a thing that's happening globally with the refuge. You know, the looking at it on a small village scale can really probably make us better understand when it's a little more difficult to understand when it's just numbers on a news article, right? So I think that could be huge, and it sounds like that's something you tried to accomplish here.
Yes, well, something as well that might be interesting for you is that, you know, Venezuela at the end of the war, the Second World War, it was that moment when the oil industry really made a boom, yeah, because of the demand, and the whole the Western civilization turned into oil extraction and oil as the main source, isn't it, of energy. And the country that used to be a rural country, it all went into oil exploitation. There was at some point refining as well, and there was a whole development towards that industry. And some decades more, some decades less, the other industries were not really developed. And in the latest years, what has happened that with the change of political view in the leadership, the agriculture is being totally dismantled, you know,
Right.
resulting into a time of hunger in the country. But then I bring this because apart from the problems with the politics, there is the fact that our times are changing, isn't it? And then that industry as such is being neglected in terms of investment and so on. So, and it's really crumbling as an industry. But on the other hand, when you think in the whole, in the civilization, the demand had changed radically. So then countries like Venezuela fall into collapse a little bit as a symptom, you know, of the end of an era. Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to, maybe to get a little political here, but a little assumptive too. Why do you think, because I was just thinking as you're explaining all this, we're talking about this, we see, obviously here being in the States, and we're talking about Denver Film Festival, we see the political impact and things obviously in this country. But I'm here, you know, we hear very easily about Brazil, or maybe even some things happening in, you know, Asia that are, but we don't hear a lot about Venezuela in the news when it comes to these things. Why do you think that it's kind of a it almost feels like a below the radar thing? I feel like a lot of people that see this interview are going to be like, I didn't know about some of these things happening in Venezuela.
Really, I mean, there has been some attention from the New York Times, I would
Right.
say. So I guess it depends in which niche you are in this
That's
era
fair.
in which we are like so in categorized in terms of communication, isn't it? But I really, I don't know, because I guess it
It's a
comes
big question. It's a
to
big
peaks.
question, I guess.
It
Yeah.
comes, I think it comes to peaks as well. There are moments when there are like these peaks, and then the nuances of the socio-political way of Venezuela are so complicated as well. That is, I think, is a little bit difficult for people to understand. But right now, what happens is that there is a country that is more or less of 30 million people, out of which 5 are out, and the other 25 are in most of them are suffering the consequences of hunger. You know what I mean? There's people, millions of people dying of hunger, and it's a country that is extremely rich in resources, you know, and that's the thing. And politically speaking, there is a government that is really totalitarian and a police state, and on the other hand, there is a blockage from the US that affects the whole banking. And I mean, these two ends of the spectrum makes people are like, lacking of oxygen, and as well the leaders.
Right.
That's the goal of the blockage. But it's a complicated situation that is similar. I compare it with Syria, because it's really very similar, that in very few years you have a country that used to be in one way like productive, or that it is like a tabula rasa situation in which all the prices dropping, people like from all over the place buying land, and people suffering because of poverty and hunger. So then you don't have a way of having sovereignty over the country, because you're surviving most of the population. So then it's a similar situation.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get back to the film, because I feel like we're getting definitely into history and politics, which I could talk to you for hours on. But it sounds like it is a very serious situation when you're talking close to 15% of the population is fleeing. Like, I mean, that's a big percentage there. So what do you want? What do you really want people to walk away? It sounds like this is very personal to you. Again, I think we're able to connect on some of these topics because this is a thing that's getting you, I don't want to say worked up, but it's important to you, these parts.
Mm-hmm.
So is this what you want people to take away from this film? Is there other meanings? Or do you feel like everybody who comes and sees the film is going to maybe have a little bit different feeling, a little bit different experience?
Well, I guess that they are going to have a different experience. I think you're not going to get out of the viewing indifferent, I hope, at least, because it actually mirrors Venezuelans, but as well mirrors, I have realized that it mirrors our times big time because of this polarization situation, And this was unintentional. I really landed in Sundance, and and then I realized that people were resonating by that side of things. So then this is one thing, but of course my mission is to bring the theme of Venezuela out there in as many platforms and spaces I can, because my own family, I am as wounded as the whole country, you see. So then it's the only film out there that is talking about the theme this year. So then in that sense, I'm like, let's go for it and talk about this theme. I know that we are all into the pandemic times, but let's talk about it. So,
right.
yeah.
There's so much to talk about this. You're right. Exactly. So you said obviously it won awards at Sundance, Hot Springs Film Festival, best foreign entry. It's showing at Denver Film Festival. Is there other places people can catch this movie at festivals, or maybe even soon online or in theaters?
Yes. Well, in the US, there are several ones, but the one that is like, oh my God, that I'm like, oh, I wish I was there as well, is the Doc New York is happening.
Oh.
And we are going straight into a streaming. We are signing with Topic Studios. I'm not so sure yet in which companies would come, but definitely is going into that. Then we are distributing in Colombia, Spain, and Mexico, which are like countries that in which this diaspora, Venezuelan diaspora, is a theme, and is like the places where this mission that I talked to you about it could be accomplished as well.
Definitely, definitely. Well, what's next? Obviously, I know filmmaking is very hard as we talk about a difficult year right now. But is there anything you want to do next after this one's done showing at festivals, or is there anything you already started working on? Anything you can share with us of what's ahead?
Yes, well, several things. All my life is dedicated to talk about Venezuelan stories. Actually, I think I'm gonna be doing that until I die. And the very next one is a short, in a short form at the moment, and it's about these anarcho-punks that are working for human rights in Caracas, and what they do is to they connect the underground production of punk music of protest in Venezuela, and make underground concerts with the goal of collecting medicines in a country in which this is an enormous theme to find medicines. So yeah.
We're going to talk about that one when it happens too. I'm
Oh
excited
yes.
about that. I love music and
Yes.
some punk music, and down there to use it for a political movement. That's the whole purpose of the genre. And so I'm really excited for that one. So we'll definitely catch up for that one again too. Okay, real quick, once upon a time in Venezuela.com, correct? Are we across social media? We mentioned before we started recording, social media is difficult, but it's out there, right?
Yeah, it is definitely out there, and I am in overall in these times of Zoom era. I am, and we are totally open to to have conversations through all the ways possible. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm open to talk.
Awesome. Well, luckily, this again, I think in an odd way, this helps us reach more people. So if you are checking this out because of our Denver Film Festival coverage, make sure when you sign up for the Denver Film Fest pass that you check out Once Upon a Time in Venezuela. Everybody else, head on over to the website, see how you can see it, or if you're able to catch it at another film festival, make sure you check out this one. Again, in a year full of such important happenings, in an election year here in the States, make sure you're checking out what these things, what's going on in the world and how it's impacting even to the smallest of villages, as well, obviously to a global picture. So Anabel, I wish we could talk for hours on this. This has been fascinating. I'm really looking forward to what else you're working on. Best of luck, obviously. But thank you so much for joining us today. I'm glad we made this work all the way from very cold Vienna, right? So anything you'd like to share before we head out?
Well, first of all, thanks very much. This is a very nice space. I congratulate you for it. And
Thank you.
please, I hope you enjoy the film. I encourage you to watch it with an open heart. We did it, well, it's needless to say that it's been done with lots of love. But as well, I think that you're going to have the opportunity to see something different in which you are not going to have a drama. There is as well this mix of humor and drama at the same time, which is very Caribbean thing. Yeah. So you're going to have this opportunity to sink into this world from your house.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anabel. That's it for this interview, but be sure to head on over to projectnerd.com and check out all our film festival coverage, as we're covering well over 7 or 8 film festivals this fall and winter. And I think appropriate to the topic we're looking at, this is going to air but right ahead of the election. So make sure you head on out and vote, whether it's here in the States for a monumental election or anywhere you reside. So again, thank you, Anabel. For everybody else, until next time.
So.